Welcome to Share Truth, Apply Scripture, the show where we take everything seriously except for ourselves. We've just decided to throw that in for this week.
Oh, yeah.
So we are talking about something really serious this week. Last week we talked about immigration, and we don't shy away from heavy topics, but we try to keep them as unheavy as possible. Mm-hmm. In studio, we've got Jordan Shambly and Cedra Sarton, and I am Teddy James. So, guys, we are talking about communism today, and before we really get into it, I have a confession to make. Uh-oh. I'm going to use the terms communism and socialism probably interchangeably, even though they're not.
Yeah, okay.
No, they're different.
They are different.
So you're not allowed to.
Yeah, you're not really allowed to, but I'm going to anyway. Okay. If you don't really like that, it's okay. You can educate me. Go to our Facebook page, go to engagemagazine.net, send me a message and tell me all the differences and send me all the articles. There are differences, but for the sake of our conversation,
okay,
we're going to combine them. Okay. Are you guys good with that?
Yeah, good with
that.
Let's
do
you
it.
good with that? Okay, all right. So we're going to say communism, socialism. We're going to put them in together because, guys, there's a lot of studies that have come out over the last couple of weeks, especially after the election, the 2016 election, where millennials, our generation, is embracing communism and socialism and all of these different things. And we need to talk about that.
We do, yeah.
It's a conversation that needs to happen. And so, first off, let's just say this. What's the attraction here? Why do you think people are attracted to socialism?
A lot of words that I hear get thrown around a lot are equality and sharing, which there's a lot more to it than that. And it's really different when it's involuntary sharing, but
we need to get into that.
But that's a whole nother thing. But that a lot of times those are the words that I've heard from people I know personally who have spoken up in favor of socialism and communism. It's all about sharing and everybody having equal everything. And those are their main that's their main argument that I've heard.
So kind of going into like a wage gap type of thing. Okay. All right, what about you?
I think a mistake a lot of people do is they don't look at the historical record. And apart from the historical record, these things look really nice. I mean, in theory, they should work. And in theory,
they could work.
They could work, and it would be wonderful, right? And that's what it seems like. But the problem is with that, you're overlooking not only the historical proof that it doesn't work and that it is actually kind of horrible, but you're overlooking the fact that people are sinful.
Yeah. And I think that part of it, too, what we're looking at with all of these studies today, and this is something that I have said routinely, the millennial generation up to this point has been the most studied group of people in the history of the world. Now,
that's why you're finding all this bad stuff.
Exactly. And people want to make headlines.
Yeah.
And so I think that is plays a pretty large part. We have to remember, Jordan, you mentioned a historical perspective. If we want a historical perspective on this, millennials are not the first generation to desire communism in America.
No.
Yeah. There was a Communist Party USA in 1919.
Wow.
I think that was the first Communist USA convention, and it was a large convention. And so we have to have a little bit of historical perspective here. All right, let's not just lay this all on the shoulders of millennials and say, it's all because of the freeloaders today. But I will say this, the generation coming up, just to go back to what I said a minute ago, they're going to be more studied than millennials. So hopefully bad news will start coming on about them.
And we can pick on them finally.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a bunch of reasons why our generation specifically is attracted to communism and socialism. Now, here's what we're going to do. What I'd like to do is spend the next couple of minutes kind of detailing some of these things because I am a firm and staunch believer in capitalism. I love capitalism. I think we're all three kind of on the same page there.
I think so.
Okay.
I think we're in agreement on that.
All right, good. So here's what we're going to do, though. People do like communism, like the idea of socialism. And I think that the result they're after is wrong, but I think the problems they have are real and are legitimate. So let's just do this. There are people out there who want socialism because they want free stuff.
Right. Oh, that's a no-brainer. I mean,
right.
I want free stuff.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't want free stuff?
The problem is somebody has to pay for it.
Yeah.
It's not free for everybody.
There's no such thing as anything. It's free stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're not just talking about the freeloaders. The freeloaders, this is what I love to do with people who are big fans of socialism. I'll typically ask them to pull out their phone because everybody has a phone.
Yeah.
And I'll say, okay, can I have your phone for a month? I'll give it back to you, but let me have your phone and you get nothing in return. Because if there's true socialism, true communism, there's no private property. So
Right.
your phone can become my phone
Yeah.
for as long as I would like. And all of a sudden now, that's how this works.
Yeah. And not to mention, they got that phone through capitalism.
Right. Right. So there's a lot of beauties in capitalism that we like. And we want to spend some time talking about that in the next segment. If you can't stick around, we're always on at engagemagazine.net/podcast. So let's talk about some of the reasons. You said that you had some friends who are fans of socialism. I have some friends who are as well. So Cedra, what arguments do you hear in favor of socialism, or reasons that people support socialism?
Well, a lot of people speak on the problems with trying to go to school. You know, when you try to further your education, that is the big one that I hear. That one in healthcare, but mainly school is right up there, and trying to go to college. And I know because I had to deal with trying to get financial aid
horrible.
and all that, because,
Yeah.
you know, and scholarships and whatever you can get to pay for school. And I know that it's really expensive. So that is probably the number one thing that I heard.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that comes from a couple of different fronts. All right, on the one side, you've got, I had K through 12 paid for. Why shouldn't I have 4 years of college paid for?
Right.
I mean, and the thing is, we can look at that and say, oh, people are just wanting free college, but they've been conditioned to ask for free college.
Yeah, exactly.
And so rather than saying, okay, you're a freeloader, we're not even going to address it, let's say, okay, well, here's why. We want you to, we see that you don't really value high school.
Right. Yeah.
And we think college is worth you valuing. We want it to cost something. And I think it's good to cost something, but I also think that there's a systematic issue because we've also been told, hey, go get a college degree and you'll get a job.
Yeah.
I graduated college in 2008. Can I tell you how few jobs there were in 2008?
Yeah.
I applied to every newspaper and magazine in Northeast Mississippi and did not get a job. There were people who had been writers for years and years who were laid off and they couldn't find a job. So one, there's been two myths that have been told. One, your education is free, K through 12. We're told that it's free. It's really not. It's paid for through taxes. But on the other hand, we're told you have to do this and you're guaranteed a job. These two myths, and I think that is part of what makes it attractive, or what makes socialism attractive. Jordan, what's another reason you think our generation is attracted to socialism?
Well, I think coming off of what you said, after you get out from under the shelter of financial security from your parents or whoever your guardian is, for most people that's the case. We didn't have to grow up working and finding ways to pay for food and stuff. That was done for us. We come out from under that, and then we're faced with a system, and we're in it, and so we see the flaws. We have a capitalism system here, but it has flaws.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
flawed because
any
people are
system
flawed.
is going to have
Yeah.
is gonna have
And
flaws.
so when we see that, our expectation was that it's going to work, everything's going to be perfect, and when it's not, our tendency is to want to fix that and to look for another option. And again, those two systems, communism, socialism, they look good on paper. They seem like they would work, and the assumption is everybody has the best of intentions. So why wouldn't we do this thing?
Right. Well, and also our generation has this tenacity that, okay, well, something hasn't worked in the past, but we can make it work.
Right, yeah. And to a degree, that's admirable. I like that about our generation.
Yeah, well, and I also think growing up, a lot of us have been told you can do and be anything.
Yeah.
You just got to put your mind to it, which is not always the case.
It's not always true, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's another argument that I've heard, and it comes from the Bible.
Yeah.
People read Acts chapter 4, and it's where it says that the whole church had everything in common, and there was not a single person with need.
Right.
And they'll say, see, the Bible supports communism and socialism.
Interesting.
How do we respond to that?
Well, I think you have to look at the situation that the church was in, but you also have to look at the word there, the sharing. It doesn't mean that everyone had the same paying job, that everyone had equal income and shared it equally, and that there was not poor and rich. It means that when someone saw a need in someone else's life, they shared in that need. They took that
Even
need
if they had
upon
to
themselves,
sacrifice.
even if they had to sacrifice. So it was not. There was no entitlement necessarily. It was an act of love. It was not an act. It was not because this person is poor, so they deserve, to be helped. It was, this person is my brother or sister in Christ. I must help them.
Right.
Yeah.
The compulsion came from the gospel and not from the end of a gun from the government.
And it wasn't a governmental system at all. They were a community of people that didn't have a government.
Right.
So they weren't a nation. It wasn't a system, a policy put in
And
place.
I really think that form of sharing loses meaning when it's forced.
Yeah, exactly.
because it's not sharing.
It's not shared. Well, I mean, I guess
here's the thing.
it is
I've got
sharing,
3
but
kids. They share toys because I make them share toys. It's not true sharing. What it is it's teaching them, okay, you're not going to lose your toy if you allow your brother or sister to play with that toy.
Right.
So, I mean,
So you have a socialism
I
system
may have
in your
socialism in
house.
my house, but I can only do that because I live in a capitalistic society.
Right, yeah.
How's that? I'm gonna flip that around
There you
on
go.
you. But I think that whenever we look at this, and this is, can we say? All right, I certainly don't believe we can say that communism and socialism is a biblical
Right.
system. The question that we certainly don't have time to answer right now,
No.
we will get into it in the next segment. Can we say that capitalism is a biblical economic system? And I think it's a little more nuanced than a minute is going to leave us. So we're going to save that for the next thing. There's one more reason that I think people that are in our generation are attracted to socialism, and it's that they got out of college, they got in debt, and they couldn't find a job. They saw their parents laid off because of the recession, and they blame capitalism for all of these issues. Like, is that something you guys have seen?
I've seen that. Yeah.
yeah, I've seen it a lot.
Yeah, and so what it comes down to is if we want to say, hey, all of the millennials in every generation who support socialism and communism do it because they're freeloaders, that's like the low-hanging fruit.
Right, yeah.
There are real issues that we can discuss that we need to wrestle with, and ultimately what it comes down to is we need to help people think through these issues. That's why we're doing this. That's why we take time and we focus on what is the attraction to the social economic system, and we're going to discuss why we are capitalists in the next segment. You're not going to want to miss it.